Welcome friends, it's Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, I make 5 more cards using the Simon Says Stamps August 2021 card kit. I've adapted Mojo Monday Sketch number 558 to make this slimline card. I cut my black panel to 3 5/8 by 8 3/8. I'll be sure and list all of the measurements in the description below. And I have cut my pattern paper on an angle and affixed that to my black card panel. And now am adding a yellow strip from the pattern paper or from the kit, pattern paper that came in the kit. Adding that to the panel, and that is a 1/2 inch strip, and am adding a little Distress Oxide squeezed lemonade to my circle, and then we'll apply a sentiment using the sticker sheet. So that sentiment comes from the sticker sheet. I've used Creative Expressions scallop stitched circle dies for my sentiment, and here I'm adding an 1/8 of an inch black strip just to give it more definition, give the panel more definition, and then I'm going to trim that excess off, and we'll come in with some of the pops of color lemon chiffon dots to add a little more interest to the sentiment circle, and we'll spread that lemon chiffon throughout the top part of the panel. Actually use 3 drops. I first mount my panel to my card base before adding the lemon chiffon drops, so that of course I don't stick my fingers in those, and those are going to take a few hours to dry. Probably best to let them dry overnight. This is a simple card, but think it turned out well. Card number 8 is also a slimline card, and it uses Freshly Made Sketches number 126. Here I have cut my 6 by 6 paper in half and taken the 2 3 by 6 strips and taped them together on the back to extend the pattern paper. I cut my first pattern paper down to 3 by 7, the one with the flowers, and then brought in the blue pattern paper and cut that down to 3 3/4 by 6. And then I cut that on an angle. Then I brought in some lacy edgers from Pink Fresh Studios and die cut the lacy edge on the blue pattern paper. I trimmed each edge off just to even that out. Then just eyeballing the top, I trimmed that down a little bit more just because there was a larger space between where my lacy edges started, and I preferred that to be just a little shorter. So that's all I'm doing here. So then I'm going to affix the blue panel to the bottom floral panel with some liquid adhesive. And then my main panel is yellow cardstock that came in the kit, and then I will affix all to that yellow panel. I cut a yellow checked pattern paper strip, a 1/2 inch, and then affix that to the top of this panel. I used numbers dies from my stash to cut out the number 2 3 times using 120-pound white cardstock. And then here I am using liquid adhesive to mount those 3 together, and then I'll set those aside to adhere. I've die cut another of the stitched circles and then a scalloped circle in green that coordinates with the pattern paper, and affix those together, and then here just trying to figure out the placement of that sentiment circle. And I am going to bring in some puffy alpha stickers from a previous Simon Says Stamps kit, and these are by Pink Fresh Studios. So I'm going to put that HBU there, and then trying to figure out, where I want my number 2, and because it's a lot larger than the alpha letters or the letters, I am going to put it on an angle so it looks more intentional. So before placing my sentiment circle or fixing it, I am bringing in a floral bouquet from the sticker sheet. This is a sticker sheet by Willard and Fern that I ordered separate from the kit. I will be sure and link it below. I did talk about it in part 1 if you saw that video, but we'll make note of it below in case that's something you're interested in. Here I'm using repositionable tape, and I have placed my number 2 stack onto just a scrap piece of paper, and I'm bringing in the Deep Sea Pops of Color to color the number 2. I thought that would go kind of tie it in with the blue pattern paper that we're using on the front panel. So that's what I'm doing here. I set that number aside to dry at least a few hours, maybe overnight. Question for you. Let me know in the comments whether you use sketches when designing your cards. I myself am loving them here lately, and I think I'll be continuing them. Card number 9 is a slimline card that uses Trinity Stamps slimline stitched panels dies. And I placed some tumbled glass onto my ink palette and used some acetate, just a piece of scrap acetate that comes from the packaging that we get our stamps in, and just added a little water, ink smooshed onto my white card panel. Did the same with some squeezed lemonade, and now some twisted citron, and keeping the blue at the top, the yellow in between, and the green at the bottom for grass. Blue, of course, being sky. And so after that dried, I used the Trinity panel die. I used the Trinity die to cut out the panel, and then I used some Sukaniko Sparkle Shimmer Spray and set that aside to dry. And once that was done, then I used a border from the sticker set, and you can see it there, the Photo Play sticker set. Use that all along the left panel, and then brought in more stickers from the sticker sheet. This card came together real easy, and after getting all of my stickers onto the panel, I brought in my wink of Stella pen to add glitter to the butterfly and the froggies. Oh, I think this is shaping up to be really cute. Then I bring in my lemon chiffon pops of color and add some of that on the panel, and also bring in some flowers from the sequins mix that came in the kit. And prior to placing my stickers, I did mount that front panel directly to my card base. Question number 2, do you use pattern paper at all when designing your cards? Let me know in the comments. I started out using the embossing folder pinpoint starlets that came in the kit, embossed that on some 40-pound basil vellum, and cut that down. That will be my focal panel. I added a little Distress Oxide ink on top. My top pattern paper measures 3 1/4 by 6, and I cut that on an angle. I'll be sure to list the measurements below. And so I've cut a navy blue mat 3 1/4 by 8 1/4, and will mount my top and my bottom pattern paper to this mat. And this is going to leave about 1/8 of an inch, actually a little wider, but I'm going to trim that down so that my mat is about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I used some liquid adhesive so that I had wiggle room when I fixed these pattern papers to the mat. Once I fix them, then I trim off that right side so that I do have the narrow matting or border that I want. I'm bringing in some scrap pattern paper strips that are about a 1/2 inch wide and placing those on the angle. And then I will bring in a larger green strip, scrap, that is about 3/4 of an inch. And in retrospect, I should have made that the same size. I think I would have liked that better. But at any rate, gonna go with this, just trimming off the sides. And I'm working on my focal panel now, my vellum, embossed vellum, and have placed a sticker onto foam squares and placed it onto the vellum, and then applied some glue to the back side of the square, applied it behind the vellum, and then that's going to be hidden. And then I've matted my vellum onto navy cardstock, and here my card base is the yellow card base from the kit, and I am now mounting my focal panel onto the card base using double-sided tape, and then we'll add the top panel to that front panel. And because I have the extra dimension with the cardstock, the strips that I placed on, I am going to add just some scraps of cardstock to the back of this focal panel, so that once I affix it to the front panel, everything is level. So that's what I'm doing here, just bringing in some scraps and getting this all lined up. I used liquid glue to affix that panel then to the front panel of the card. I placed an acrylic block on top to get good tack, I should say. And then I bring in some flowers from the sticker sheet and place them on the bottom panel or bottom portion of the panel, and bring in my Wink of Stella brush to add some glitter shine to those flowers, and added a little bit to my sun on the focal panel. And now I'm bringing in the pops of color in the lemon chiffon and adding 3 random dots to the top of that panel. I also bring in some of the flowers from the embellishment packet that came in the kit, and place those on the panel using Ranger Multi-Matte Medium adhesive. And I had so much fun with this kit, I created a bonus card, card number 11, because I had not used this froggy image and I just had to use him. I used the stencil from the kit to create a focal panel, brought in tumbled glass to create the clouds, and then used the bottom portion of the stencil to bring in water, and I used Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink for that. This slimline card is actually going to measure 3.5 by 8.5. So I've cut my navy matte to 3.5 by 8.5 because it will span the full size of the card. Again, I will leave all of the measurements below. After I get my pattern paper affixed to the blue mat, then I will trim that down a little just to get that narrow border at the bottom. Then I'm going to bring in 1/8 of an inch navy strip and add that to the card panel and trim that off. So I will put an acrylic block there so that that adheres really well. And then off camera I have used alcohol markers to color my froggy. And here I am, I've affixed my focal panel to the navy matte, bringing in my froggy and looking to see where I will position him. And then I am stamping my sentiment Unfrogettable on navy cardstock using some white embossing powder. And I will heat emboss that with my heat. Then I'm going to bring in my or place my focal panel into my MISTI and figure out the placement of part of the sentiment, Hope Your Birthday Is. And so I'm using Hero Arts Mid-Tone Navy ink to stamp that directly onto the panel. I'm using liquid glue to affix my froggy directly to the panel. I've placed him on an angle so he looks like he's floating from the tree in the air into the sea or the water. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in my main sentiment strip, which I've trimmed down to about 3/4 of an inch, and bring that in, affix it with some glue using my grid mat to line it up, and then I will go ahead and trim off the sides of that panel. I've placed a ruler and lined that, placed it on the panel, lined it up using my grid mat so that I know exactly where to place my focal panel after I get the liquid glue on it. Next, I'm going to go ahead using double-sided tape and mount my panel to my card base. Then I'm going to bring in some Nouveau White Blizzard glitter drops and place about 3 of those, or place 3 of those on the panel and set that aside to dry. Lovely. I love the way this card turned out. I will be sure to list my DIY Slimline Envelope tutorial in the description below because I always make coordinating envelopes with all of my Slimline cards. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. And if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Good day, friends.